I'm Bob and I like to make stuff. Today we're gonna make some new built-ins. In our living room, we had some old built-in shelves. Now these were made a long time ago. In fact, you can see that they were made to have a place for an old tube TV, and I had to cut a section out just to fit our big flat TV in place. This is the TV that we're working around, and so we put it into the 3D model so we could model the shelves around it. But on top of the 4K TV, we're also gonna have the only laser 4K projector. This is the LG Cinebeam, and so we have to make sure that we have a place down in the cabinets to hide this thing away. So now it's time to completely rip these out and rebuild them, make them modern, and make them fit our needs. On the back side of this panel, there's a whole nother set of shelves, and we're gonna deal with those later. Right now, we're just gonna worry about these. So I'm gonna finish tearing these out, and we'll go talk about the design. To figure out the design, I took some measurements of the actual space and then went into Fusion 360 and made a rough model of what I wanted it to look like. I gave that to Josh and he turned it into the actual model with really specific dimensions and layout. This will help us figure out how much material we need and how we need to break it down to build this. We also worked in some of the specific needs for different things into the model, including the sponsor for this video, which is LG. They gave us this really awesome projector, and we'll talk more about that later on. But we wanted to have a way to hide that projector away into the cabinets, but we also wanted to hide away a retractable screen. You can't tell right now, but a screen is going to come down and cover all of those cabinets. We also decided to make the shelves adjustable so we can move them up and down, and made sure that the left side was big enough for the TV and the sound bar, and there was space behind it to run all the wiring for the game systems and everything else. Also wanted to point out that we have the opportunity to build this in sections, take it outside and paint it, and then install it into the place. And if you do that, you don't have to worry so much about the walls being perfectly square and parallel. You can put all the pieces in place and then build a face frame to fill in all the gaps. This is gonna be some pretty simple cabinetry, so we've got a lot of sheets to break down and a lot of holes to drill. Let's go do it. I'm using pocket holes for this, which I know some people don't like, and it doesn't really matter. Pocket holes are something that cabinet makers have been using for a very long time. They work perfectly in this case. I wanted to show you a quick trick here. If you don't have one of the specialized clamps for holding two pieces at a 90-degree angle, you can take a board like this and screw it down into your work surface and then use it to butt your pieces up against. I finished assembling all four of the bottom cabinets. Now these are extremely simple cabinet construction. They don't have a face frame, so I'm going to cover the front of this plywood with some edge banding. We have a whole bits video on how to do that. It's super simple, but the reason I'm doing it is because we're going to spray all of these cabinets white. When you have in grain of plywood, it will soak up the paint in a way that you don't really want. So by putting edge banding on it, it'll give you a uniform surface once you paint it. I've got the edge banding on all 4 of the cabinets, and I wrapped around the 8 doors that are going to go on those cabinets. Next is the surface that will be on top of them. Now this is a long span, it's about 9 feet, so we're making it out of 2 pieces of plywood, and we're going to have to join those together. And to do that, again, we're going to use pocket holes on the underside to draw the 2 pieces together. And then once we get this made, then we'll start building the stuff that goes on top of it. We did a dry fit of all the cabinets and the countertop, and now we're going to start building these adjustable shelves. And for that, we're going to use this jig, and this is an easy way to drill holes all the same distance from the front, the same distance from each other. You just lay this down on the piece and then drill into it. Then you use those holes as a reference to be able to move it down and drill more holes. I drilled all the holes down one side and realized that I don't really need it to be that adjustable, so for the other ones I'm actually going to skip every other hole. It should be fine. A cool thing about a jig like this is that you can use as many or as few of the holes as you want. Then you use this referencing pin to go into the hole that you drilled to set the jig in the next position. I've got all those holes drilled on the 3 uprights, and to connect these together I have a 1/2 inch piece of plywood, and we're just going to set these like this and use a corner clamp to hold them at 90 degrees, countersink some holes from the top, and then drive in some screws. This is going to be kind of a flimsy piece by itself, but then once it gets attached to the main assembly, it'll get stronger. Also, all of this stuff's going to get screwed to the wall. I'm going to use one of the shelves here as a spacer to make sure that I get the center piece in the right position. You can measure it, but I already pre-cut the shelves, so I may as well just use them. I've started cutting down the face frames. Now these are solid pieces of wood, not plywood, that are going to go on the front of these uprights. Since we've got all the structure in place and clamped together, we can go ahead and cut these pieces and get them placed. I'm going to do all the interior pieces, and the last 2 pieces to do will be the outside ones. That way we can move them in and out to fill any gaps within the space that this is all going in. Now these are made from normal 1x4s. So I start with a really long 1x4 like this, cut it to the length that I need, and then rip it right down the middle, and I get strips that are 1.5 inches. I've got all the vertical pieces cut and then the long pieces. Now I just have to make the pieces that go on the front of the shelves. The shelves are going to be adjustable, so it's going to be kind of weird to get those pieces lifted out of place with a face frame on them. It's also going to be a little bit weird because some of the face frames are centered on this piece, some have to go to the edge. Depending on what your space is like, if you're building built-ins, you may have to adjust face frames around a little bit to hide things. I'm going to go ahead and screw these two pieces together, even though we have to carry this upstairs. It's going to be really long, but it's also going to make it a lot easier to go ahead and attach some of the face frames. So we should still be able to take this entire top section and carry it upstairs so that we can paint it and we can install it. I'm countersinking these a little bit so that we can come back with some wood filler and fill them in before we paint this entire thing. A piece of plywood over a span this long will often droop, especially if it's only ½ of an inch. I'm going to lift it up with my finger so it's flush with the top of the face frame and then drive in some nails. I'll do this all the way down and just lift it into place as I go. For this piece, it goes centered on the 3/4 inch piece of plywood. So that means it overhangs each side 3/8 of an inch. So I made a little spacer that I can put back here. So I know that I'm gonna nail it on and it's gonna be centered on this back piece. Putting the face frame on the shelf as well, but in this case it needs to be lined up with the outside edge on one side, and then it overhangs a little bit on the other side so that it can go behind the face frame up here. After selecting the hinges that we wanted to use, Josh made a quick jig so that we could drill the holes in the right spot consistently between all of the cabinet boxes. We also used a jig made specifically for concealed hinges to drill the holes on the back side of the doors. Like always, we'll have a link down in the description to a list of all the tools and materials that we use for this project. We got one set of doors on, now we just have to repeat that same process to get the rest of them put on, but first I'm gonna move on to this thing. We're calling this the shadow because we don't have a better name for it, but basically this is where the TV is gonna go. And we're gonna make a frame that goes behind the TV, and it's just to cover the outside shape, but still leave a hole right in the middle behind the TV so we can run all the wires through and all that stuff. So I'm gonna make a little frame, again with some pocket holes, that will fit right into that opening, and then we can adjust it forward and backward based on where the TV ends up setting. We got all the pieces up here to dry fit them into place to make sure that everything looks good. We ended up having to take out one of the pieces of that shadow, that frame that I was talking about, because it wasn't quite tall enough. Instead, we're going to put a taller piece in there and then mount the brackets for the soundbar directly to that, so the soundbar will sit right here above the TV. We also had to make sure that the TV was the right size for that shadow, and that's all looking good. So the next thing is to figure out where to put this top bar. We were going to put a small piece of trim, but now we realize that you can actually see through this into the room behind. We don't want that. So we're going to end up making a box to kind of hide that, and then the screen is going to be mounted right up here behind this wall so it'll drop down in front of all this stuff. It's going to be awesome. We made these cabinets the height so that we can put all the game systems in here, and it'll fit this projector right into here. So anytime we want to watch a movie, you can just pull it out, plug it up. We're starting to install all these pieces now, and the countertop that goes on here is just a 3/4 inch piece, but it looks like it's taller from the front. So we're going to put down some spacers on top of the cabinets to make sure that it's lifted up, so from the front edge you'll just see the face frame. There was a little bit of a gap on the one side of the cabinet, so we just put in a spacer. It turned out to be 1/2 inch, so it works really well. Just have to come back and paint that when we're painting all the trim and everything else. We've got the two outside pieces attached to the stud, so this whole thing is sturdy now and in place, but these two are free floating, so we gotta make sure that they are square to the tabletop here, and then make sure that they're evenly spaced so that the shelves I made will fit in between them. I'm using the shelf as a spacer to keep them apart, and then I also put a level on this side to make sure this one is perfectly plumb. So we decided to cut a section out of the bottom of this shadow piece, and it was already assembled, so I'm standing in the middle of it. So the gap right here that we just cut is so that the stand of the TV can slide through here, and that way we can push the TV back a little bit further. Sometimes on the newer TVs, the stand on the back side is much bigger than the stand on the front, so this will account for that. One of the next steps is to mount the screen. Now originally we were going to put the screen on this surface and then cover it on the front side. After we got all this torn out, we realized that there's actually space behind it, so instead we're going to put the screen up in here. And the problem with that is that there's nothing up there to mount to. So to mount it, we're going to use these metal brackets and cut them down to size, put them up here, mount the screen to the bottom, and then make a cover on the back side here so that you don't see the room through it. So we got to measure these and cut them down. This video is sponsored by LG, and the whole reason I'm putting a retractable screen in here is because they sent me their new LG Cinebeam 4K projector. This thing is a laser-based projector that can put a 4K image on the wall up to 150 inches. It's got 2,500 lumens of brightness, and it lasts for about 20,000 hours. A lot of 4K projectors are pretty big, and this one's been engineered in a special way to make it about half the size of other projectors in its class. And the interface in it is really cool. It's got smart apps built in, it's got Bluetooth out, plus it has HDMI ports, USB ports, a LAN port so you can hook it up to your network. You can control it with a USB mouse and keyboard or the remote, which you can actually point at the projection to control all the interface stuff. One of the things I think is really cool about this projector is it can be used in two different orientations. You can stand it up like a tower and project onto the ceiling or in any other direction, but you can also lay this thing on its side and get the same projection. And even better than that, it's got a handle. You don't have to mount this thing to the ceiling or to a table. You can hide it away when you're not using it. In fact, you could even take it over to a friend's house if you wanted to. The image is incredibly crisp and clear and bright. I've been really impressed with it so far, and I can't wait to watch some big movies at our house with it. Stick around to the end of this video and we will show you it in use on my new screen with no image manipulation whatsoever. You'll get to see exactly what it looks like in the space. Thanks, LG. This is the screen that we're going to use, and these were the original mounting brackets that came with it. And instead of taking these off and replacing them, we're just going to tie into them. But we're going to be mounting from the front side. So this is going to fit on here, and then I'll just trace the holes that came with it so that I can make new holes in the bracket. I wanted to show you a quick test of the projector in this room. Now keep in mind, it's 1 o'clock in the afternoon. There's a bunch of windows on that wall, and we are not going to adjust this footage at all, which means my face may be a little bit dark here. I wanted to show you how bright the projector is in this space. It looks awesome. I'm really impressed with it so far, and I can't wait to watch a whole bunch of movies on this. We're going to have links to it down in the description if you want to check it out. Now, let me pull up this screen and show you the shelves. I'm really happy with how these shelves came out. It's a pretty simple project, but it really does make a pretty big difference in your living room. Of course, it's awesome to have the screen and the projector. That's just super cool. Now, normally I ask you guys what you think about these projects, but I would actually prefer to hear what you learned from this project. If there's something new that you picked out of this particular video, please let me know down in the comments, because that's just going to help us make better videos going forward. If you're new to the channel, we've got a whole bunch of other types of videos for you to check out, and if you're not subscribed, please go ahead and do that and hit the bell. That's it for this one, guys. Thanks for watching. See you next time. I went into Fusion 360 and transmolated. The left side was big enough to hold the TV. What? What did I say? Dang it.